The arena on Ganymede prison colony was carved from iron and black ice, its walls rising like the teeth of some ancient beast. Thousands of humans, soldiers, miners, even children from captured colonies, were herded into rows of cages suspended over platforms of shimmering plasma. Alien nobles filled the balconies, their crystalline robes glinting in the artificial sunlight. They were silent at first, savoring the anticipation. At the center of it all stood Lord Admiral Zerath Valkores, tall and pale-skinned, a symbol of the Empire's arrogance. Valkores raised one clawed hand, and the air vibrated with his voice. "Behold the fate of insolent vermin! Fire is the language of order, and in its light, humanity will see its true place, ash beneath our will." A wave of sound broke over the balconies, cheers, shrieks, and cruel laughter. With a gesture, he activated the cages. Blue fire roared upward, engulfing the prisoners. Screams pierced the metallic air, echoing across the colony and spilling into the networks that carried broadcasts to every corner of the Empire. Flames clawed at the sky, and the smell of burning flesh seeped even into sealed ventilation. The prisoners' agony was deliberate, stretched by calibrated heat to prolong death. Families across Earth and its colonies watched in disbelief. Children pressed against screens, unable to look away as fathers and mothers were burned alive. The image of fire swallowing human faces branded itself into every mind. In the unified command hall on Earth, silence ruled. Rows of officials sat frozen, unable to process the cruelty. Among them, Commander Marcus Hale stood motionless, his jaw rigid, his fists locked at his sides. His eyes never left the broadcast, though each second was a knife twisting deeper. There, in the third cage from the left, a familiar face appeared, his brother Daniel, a Marine captured during a border skirmish months before. Daniel's eyes searched the crowd one last time, as though he knew his brother would be watching. Then the fire consumed him, his scream rising with the others. The screen blurred as Marcus's vision filled with tears he refused to shed. A voice beside him whispered, "God help us!" But Marcus spoke through clenched teeth, his words cold and steady. "No. God will not help us. We will help ourselves." The chamber erupted in debate. Some argued for restraint, fearing humanity's annihilation if they defied the Empire. Others demanded vengeance, their voices hoarse with rage. The council spiraled into chaos until the chairwoman banged her staff for silence. "Commander Hale, you've seen this atrocity. Speak." All eyes turned to him. He rose slowly, every movement deliberate, his grief smoldering into resolve. "They wanted us broken," he began, his voice calm but carrying across the hall. "They wanted us crawling in fear. Instead, they have given us steel. Every scream we heard today is a forge. Every flame a hammer. We will not bow. We will not forgive. And if the Empire believes humanity will accept chains, they have miscalculated their own survival." He paused, letting the weight of silence settle. "My brother burned today. Thousands burned. But tomorrow, it will be them. I say we answer their fire with total war." The words cut through hesitation like a blade. One by one, council members nodded, their fear transforming into grim determination. A vote was called. For the first time in Earth's history, the decision was unanimous. The Terran Accord declared war on the Galactic Empire. Outside the hall, the news spread in a storm. Riots transformed into rallies. Colonies signaled their loyalty with pledges of troops and resources. Factories abandoned civilian production overnight, forging weapons and armor instead. In the shipyards above Mars, engineers worked around the clock, welding the first hulls of a fleet born from vengeance. Yet amidst the fever of war, Marcus found a quiet corner within the council building. Alone, he finally allowed himself to breathe. His brother's last scream echoed in memory, but instead of crushing him, it drove him forward. He whispered to the empty room, a vow meant only for the dead. "I will make them remember your name, Daniel. They will remember all of you." The door opened, breaking his solitude. Admiral Chen, an old rival and occasional friend, stepped in. Her eyes softened when she saw him. "You know what this means, Marcus. The Empire won't underestimate us again. They'll come with everything. Marcus nodded. Then we'll give them everything. No more skirmishes. No more defenses. This is survival. She studied him carefully. And vengeance? He met her gaze without flinching. Justice. The next day, he stood before the first assembled captains of Earth's unified war fleet. Their ships were still incomplete, their weapons untested, but every face carried the same fire. Marcus scanned them, feeling the weight of command settle on his shoulders. You've all seen what they did, he said, voice steady. You've heard the screams. The Empire thinks fire can break us. But they don't understand what fire does to humans. It forges. It hardens. And now it burns in us. He let the silence stretch, then spoke the words that would define the campaign. We will not stop until their empire is ash. We will not stop until no human child fears a cage. We will not stop until the stars themselves remember what happens when you burn our people alive. The fleet erupted in a thunder of approval, fists pounding on consoles, voices raised in unison. In that moment, Marcus knew humanity was ready, not because of weapons or ships, but because of rage transformed into unity. Far away, in his palace of obsidian towers, Valkyries received reports of Earth's declaration of war. He laughed, a sound sharp as broken glass. To him, humanity was dust, incapable of standing against the oldest empire in the stars. Let them come, he said, sipping from a chalice of molten crystal. I will burn their world until the oceans boil. But even he felt a flicker of unease when he remembered the look in the prisoner's eyes before the fire took them. Not despair, something else. Something defiant. On Earth, Marcus Hale watched the first dreadnought rise from the Martian shipyards, its armor gleaming red in the light of dawn. It was only the beginning, but it was enough. Humanity had been given fire. Now it would return it. The stars were no longer silent. They waited for war. The shipyards above Mars no longer slept. Towers of scaffolding wrapped around incomplete hulls, sparks rained like fiery comets as welders stitched steel to steel, and the thunder of machinery echoed across orbit. Civilian liners were stripped, retrofitted into carriers, while engineers sketched radical designs without pause. Humanity's survival demanded speed, and fear drove innovation faster than caution ever had. Commander Marcus Hale stalked the platforms, boots clanging on metal walkways. His presence carried weight, not because of rank, but because of the resolve burning behind his eyes. Every worker who glimpsed him straightened. They knew what he had lost, and that loss had become the war's center of gravity. Admiral Chen joined him on the observation deck, her gaze fixed on the half-completed dreadnought suspended in dry dock. Its armor plates shimmered like obsidian glass. She's almost ready, Chen said. The Gravekeeper. Fitting name, don't you think? Marcus nodded, expression hard. This war will dig plenty of graves. Best we make sure they're theirs. Behind them, a junior officer hurried over with a datapad. Commander, orbital cannon prototypes have passed stress tests. We can conceal them in asteroid belts as planned. Marcus scanned the report, then gave a curt nod. Deploy them quietly. When the Empire arrives, they'll think the rocks themselves fight for us. The officer saluted and left, boots striking the deck with renewed determination. Chen folded her arms. We're planning a war on a scale we've never fought. You realize the odds, Marcus. I know the odds, he said flatly. I just don't care. The first strikes began weeks later. Terran fleets slipped into border systems under stealth drives, targeting supply lines that fed the Empire's forward garrisons. A convoy of freighters escorted by 2 cruisers found itself ambushed near the gas giant Thalassa. Human destroyers decloaked, unleashing railguns that tore through armored hulls. Flames blossomed across the void, scattering debris like confetti. The battle ended in minutes. Not a single freighter survived. On another front, black-clad Terran commandos infiltrated a starport on Velos Prime. Disguised as laborers, they planted charges in fuel depots, vanishing before alarms sounded. When the explosives detonated, the night sky glowed red, and towers collapsed in a rain of fire. Empire citizens awoke to panic, realizing their vaunted security had been pierced by those they once dismissed as primitives. Marcus addressed his captains aboard the fleet flagship Iron Resolve. The briefing room hummed with tension. "They wanted us to hide behind walls," he said, voice steady. "Instead, we hunt them in their own territory. Every ship we burn, every depot we destroy, reminds them this is no longer a one-sided war. Fear is our ally. Make them feel it in their bones." Captain Imani raised a hand. "And when they come back in force?" Marcus met her gaze. "Then we make them bleed harder than they thought possible." News of humanity's defiance spread like infection through the Empire. Worlds that once celebrated the burning of prisoners now whispered in fear of invisible fleets. Trade slowed. Governors demanded protection that never came. For the first time in generations, the Empire's citizens doubted their invincibility. In the Imperial Palace, Valkyries slammed his fist against a crystal table, shattering it into shards. Reports lay scattered at his feet, convoys lost, governors killed, fleets harassed. His council cowered in silence. "Do you understand what this means?" Valkyries roared. "Vermin gnawing at the walls of our empire, while you stand trembling." A subordinate tried to speak. "My lord, perhaps these raids—" "Silence!" Valkyries' voice cracked like a whip. "They are nothing but sparks. And sparks are crushed beneath boots." But even as he dismissed them, unease grew in his mind. Sparks could ignite fire. And fire, if uncontrolled, consumed empires. The crucible came at Charon's Divide, a binary star system whose twin suns cast shadows across fractured asteroid fields. Valkyries dispatched a fleet of over 200 warships, confident he would extinguish humanity in one decisive blow. Marcus stood on the bridge of the Great Keeper, eyes locked on tactical displays. His fleet was smaller, barely a third the size of the armada bearing down on them. Every officer knew the odds, yet none faltered. Admiral Chen's voice crackled over comms. "They outnumber us 3-1. If this fails—" Marcus cut her off. "Then it doesn't fail." The Empire's fleet surged forward, a tide of steel and plasma. Marcus waited, every nerve taut, as their formations drew closer. Then he gave the order. "Activate the divide." Hidden among the asteroids, disguised as harmless rock, the orbital cannons came alive. Massive lenses rotated, energy cores humming with power. In perfect synchronization, beams of white-hot light lanced outward, striking the Empire's vanguard. Ships erupted in blinding explosions. Cruisers sheared apart, battleships cracked like brittle glass. Panic spread across Imperial ranks as more cannons fired, beams carving through hulls with merciless precision. In minutes, over 50 warships were reduced to wreckage. On the Grey Keeper, crew erupted in cheers, but Marcus remained stone-faced. "Don't celebrate yet. They'll come harder." And they did. The Empire regrouped, pressing forward in fury, but their formations were fractured. Terran ships darted between them, striking engines, targeting command bridges, vanishing before counterfire could lock on. Chen's voice came again. "They're breaking. Valkyries will feel this one." Marcus allowed himself a grim smile. "Good. Let him bleed." On the flagship of the Empire, Valkyries stared in disbelief at the carnage. Dozens of his ships burned, their wreckage drifting like shattered bones. His pride faltered, replaced by rage. "They dare?" he hissed. "They dare defy me?" He rose, voice booming across the fleet. "Burn their worlds. Leave nothing but dust. If Earth wishes to challenge the Empire, then Earth itself will be the pyre." Back aboard the Grey Keeper, Marcus stood in the quiet aftermath, stars littered with debris around him. His crew watched him expectantly, waiting for orders. He knew what was coming. Valkyries would unleash everything. He turned to his officers. "The Empire will come for our homeworld. They'll throw their fleets at us until we drown in fire. But we won't drown. We'll stand. Because this isn't just war, it's survival." A silence followed, not of fear, but of conviction. Each officer knew the road ahead would be blood-soaked. None turned away. Marcus Hale looked once more at the drifting wreckage of the Imperial fleet. For the first time, humanity had drawn true blood. But victories carried consequences. The storm was coming, and it would fall hardest on Earth. The Terran War Council gathered in a bunker beneath the Andes, walls reinforced with steel and concrete thick enough to resist orbital bombardment. Holographic maps filled the room, outlining the Empire's counteroffensive, fleets assembling in every sector, all converging toward Earth. The air tasted of iron and sweat. No one spoke until Marcus Hale entered. His presence silenced the chamber more than the alarms could. He studied the map, eyes tracing the Empire's chokehold tightening around humanity. He knew hesitation now meant extinction. "They'll throw everything at us," he said, his voice low but steady. "If we wait, they'll bleed us dry system by system. We must strike first." Admiral Chen frowned. "Straight into their core?" Marcus nodded. "Operation Tombstone. One decisive blow. We take the war to their heart before they reach ours." Murmurs swept the chamber. Some argued for caution, others for delay. Marcus cut through the noise. "Every day we hesitate, they burn another colony. Every hour we wait, more families die. They believe fire can break us. Let's show them we are the fire." The vote passed. Humanity committed to an offensive no sane strategist would recommend. The council dispersed, leaving Marcus alone with the weight of a species on his shoulders. The Terran armada departed from Titan's orbit under a blood-red sky. Dozens of dreadnoughts, carriers, and escorts moved as one, their hulls gleaming with fresh scars of battle. Pilots scribbled names of the dead on missiles. Soldiers whispered prayers and curses in equal measure. On the bridge of the Gravekeeper, Marcus stood before his crew. His face bore the calm of a man who had accepted both victory and death as possible outcomes. "This began at Ganymede," he said. "With our people burned alive. Today, we return the fire. Remember them when the guns ignite. Remember them when the stars turn red. Today, we answer." The fleet jumped into hyperspace. They emerged in the heart of the Empire, a system of 7 worlds orbiting a massive blue sun. Floating above the capital was Valkyries' personal armada, a sea of steel stretching beyond sight. Terran ships were outnumbered 5 to 1. The odds, on paper, were impossible. Valkyries' flagship, the Eternal Wrath, loomed ahead, its hull larger than any Terran city. From its throne chamber, Valkyries sneered as reports flooded in. "So the vermin crawl to their own deaths. Very well. Let them burn here before my eyes." He raised his clawed hand, and the Empire's fleet advanced in perfect, merciless formation. The first exchange tore through the void. Imperial barrages thundered, lances of plasma slamming into Terran shields. Smaller ships were vaporized instantly, their crews lost before they could fire back. Marcus stood firm, eyes locked on tactical readouts. "Hold the line," he ordered, his voice like steel. Terran fleets responded with precision strikes, destroyers weaving between behemoth cruisers, targeting engines, cracking command decks. For every Terran ship lost, 3 Imperial vessels fell, but numbers pressed relentlessly. Humanity could not win by attrition. Then Marcus gave the signal. "Release the tombstones." From hidden jump space corridors, orbital cannons emerged, massive constructs dragged across light years. Their cores flared, releasing beams of energy so bright they turned night into day. Entire Imperial wings disintegrated, ships bursting into molten shards. Gasps filled the Terran bridges as centuries of invincible power crumbled before them. Chen's voice came over comms, breathless. "They're faltering. Marcus, it's working." "Press them," Marcus replied. "Do not stop." The battlefield descended into chaos. Imperial formations fractured, their discipline unraveling. Terran Marines boarded crippled ships, storming corridors in brutal close-quarters combat. Screams and gunfire echoed through steel chambers as humanity fought with the desperation of survival. Amid the carnage, the Gravekeeper drove straight toward the Eternal Wrath. Crew members exchanged tense glances. To attack Valkyries directly was madness, but Marcus left no doubt. Target their flagship. End this at the throat. The clash was apocalyptic. The eternal wrath unleashed barrages that shook the Gravekeeper to its core. Consoles burst into sparks, smoke filled the bridge, but Marcus never wavered. Return fire, he commanded. Cannons roared, tearing into the enemy's shields. Still, Valkyries' ship pressed forward, a titan against a wounded predator. On the Imperial Bridge, Valkyries stood at the heart of the storm. His laughter was cruel, echoing through the chamber. You should have stayed in your cages, human, he mocked over open channels. You should have died screaming like the rest. Marcus answered, his voice cold, every word carved from grief and fury. We are not your prisoners. We are your executioners. The two flagships exchanged fire point-blank, energy beams cutting across void. Hulls groaned, metal shrieked, men and women screamed as explosions tore decks apart. Both ships bled flame, yet neither yielded. Valkyries leaned forward, snarling. You cannot win. Your species will drown in the fire you invite. Marcus's reply was steady, sharp as a blade. We don't drown in fire. We rise from it. And you, he pointed toward the looming silhouette of the enemy flagship. You burn. At his signal, the Gravekeeper unleashed its full payload. Torpedoes streaked forward, guided by vengeance more than technology. They punched through the wounded hull of the Eternal Wrath, burrowing deep. A heartbeat later, the flagship erupted, a star blooming in the void. The explosion rippled across the battlefield. Imperial ships, leaderless, faltered. Terran fleets pressed forward, relentless, tearing apart resistance with newfound fury. One by one, Imperial warships fell silent, until only wreckage drifted in the blue sun's light. On the Gravekeeper, silence followed. Smoke curled through the bridge, alarms wailed, but no one spoke. They all stared at the dying light of the Empire's might. Marcus broke the silence. Transmit to every system. A young officer hesitated. What message, sir? Marcus stood tall, his uniform torn, face smeared with blood and soot. His voice carried the weight of the dead and the defiance of the living. This war began in fire. It ends in silence. Humanity bows to no empire. The message pulsed through the stars, echoing across conquered systems, rebel worlds, and distant civilizations. On a dozen alien planets, beings of countless shapes and sizes watched in awe. They had laughed at humanity once, mocked their fragility, their small ships, their untested fleets. Now they whispered in fear and respect. The humans had stood against the oldest empire in the galaxy, and shattered it. Back aboard the Gravekeeper, Marcus stood at the viewport. The battlefield stretched before him, a graveyard of twisted metal and drifting corpses. Yet beneath the grief, he felt something colder, resolve. The Empire had burned his brother alive. Tonight, that fire had been returned. Admiral Chen approached, her voice softer than he had ever heard. It's over. Marcus shook his head slightly. No. It's just begun. They'll all remember this day. Every empire, every council, every ruler. Humanity isn't prey anymore. We're the storm. He watched the wreckage glow against the blue sun, a silent promise carved into the void. The age of submission was gone. The age of humanity had begun.